I never imagined that what started as a simple Saturday grocery run would turn into a full-blown public scene, with shouting, spilled groceries, a crowd of onlookers, and someone nearly getting arrested. But when you live in a neighborhood governed by Karen Mitchell, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, nothing stays simple for long. She's the kind of person who treats every minor detail like a personal crusade, and unfortunately, this time I was in her crosshairs. The first red flag came in the produce aisle. I was comparing avocados, looking for ones just ripe enough for guacamole, when I noticed her across the way staring at me like I just vandalized her lawn. I should have known then something was coming, but I brushed it off. I mean, how dramatic could a grocery store trip get? 45 minutes later, with a full cart and a craving for lunch, I finally got in line behind an elderly man who was carefully counting out coins to pay for his groceries. I waited patiently, scrolling through my phone. When it was finally my turn, I sighed in relief, unloaded my items, and was just about to swipe my card when it happened. A sharp, high-pitched voice sliced through the hum of store chatter. "Stop right there. Put those down. Those are mine." I turned, startled, and there she was, Karen Mitchell herself, storming toward me with her cart, nearly ramming into my side. Her face was flushed, eyes wide with outrage, and she jabbed a perfectly manicured finger in my direction. "You cut in front of me," she snapped. "I was in this line before you. You just walked right in. Typical." I blinked in confusion, then glanced at the cashier and back at her. "I've been here for at least 10 minutes, I said, trying to stay calm. "You weren't even in the aisle." But Karen wasn't interested in the truth. She was on a mission. She leaned in, closer, and hissed, "Don't act like you don't know me. You're the new guy in the Oakwood complex, the one who hasn't fixed that illegally colored mailbox." Ah, there it was. The real reason behind this chaos. 2 weeks earlier, I'd received a formal notice from the HOA about my mailbox being painted cerulean blue instead of the approved midnight navy. I had planned to repaint it this weekend. Apparently, that wasn't soon enough for Karen. Before I could respond, the cashier, Sarah, according to her name tag, spoke up. "Ma'am, I saw him standing here before you arrived. He was waiting, while the gentleman ahead of him checked out, but Karen refused to back down." "You clearly weren't paying attention," she snapped at Sarah. "I want your manager. Right now. And these," she said, pointing to the groceries Sarah had already bagged, "are mine." Then she reached across me and grabbed one of the bags I'd already packed. Instinctively, I held on, and just like that, we were locked in the most ridiculous tug-of-war ever to take place in a Harris Teeter checkout lane. I said as calmly as I could, "Let go. I paid for these." Sarah quickly corrected me. "Well, technically, he hasn't paid yet, but they are his items." Karen tightened her grip. "I was here first. They're mine. You can go to the back and start over." By now, a small crowd had gathered. People behind us were whispering, pointing, and recording the scene with their phones. The line had come to a complete standstill. I tried one last time to de-escalate. "Look," I said, "I don't know what kind of problem you have with me, but I've done nothing wrong. I've been waiting my turn. If you're in such a rush, there are plenty of open lanes." That's when she lost it. "Do you have any idea who I am?" she barked. "I'm the president of the Oakwood Heights Homeowners Association. I can make your life hell." I couldn't help but smirk. "More than you already are? That would be impressive." And then she yanked the bag. Hard enough to rip it apart, fruit flew everywhere. Apples bounced across the floor, a carton of eggs splattered on impact, and a bottle of olive oil burst open like a mini explosion. The aisle became a slippery mess. "See what you've done?" Karen shouted, as if I'd been the one to cause it. This is exactly the kind of carelessness we don't tolerate in our community. Right then, Greg, the store manager, arrived, clearly alerted by the sound of breaking glass. He looked at the scene with a mix of horror and disbelief. "What on earth is going on here?" he asked. Karen didn't skip a beat. "This man cut in line, then physically assaulted me when I called him out." I was stunned into silence for a moment. "That is absolutely not true," I finally managed. "She's been harassing me over some HOA nonsense and just caused a scene in your store." Greg looked between us, trying to make sense of it all. "Okay, I need everyone to calm down," he said. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for disturbances." "I am calm," I replied. "I just want to buy my groceries and leave." Karen, meanwhile, turned toward the gathering crowd. "He doesn't follow HOA rules. He parks in visitor spots. Probably doesn't recycle. He's a menace. I rolled my eyes. None of that has anything to do with a grocery store. Greg seemed to agree. Then someone from the crowd, an older woman, spoke up. You should call the police. Others murmured in agreement. I quickly stepped in. There's no need for that. I just want to leave with what's left of my groceries, but Greg shook his head slightly. Actually, I think it might be best. Her behavior is disruptive. And we can't allow that, Karen gasped. Are you serious? Do you know how much I spend in this store? I'll have your job. Greg didn't even flinch. Ma'am, please step aside. As I walked out, slightly shaken, a little hungry, and down a dozen eggs, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. What started as a trip for avocados turned into a showdown over power, pettiness, and a mailbox paint job. And that's life when Karen Mitchell lives in your neighborhood. Extended story. Karen's meltdown at the checkout and wait for the officers to arrive. Sir, let's get you checked out at another register, Greg said gently, guiding me toward an empty lane. Karen's fury reached a new level. Don't you walk away from me, she shrieked, lunging forward. What happened next unfolded in slow motion. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. I instinctively pulled back, and that's when she lost her balance, slipping on the olive oil that had already created a dangerous mess on the tile floor. In her desperate attempt to steady herself, she reached for the nearest thing. My remaining bag of groceries. The carton of eggs I had so carefully selected tumbled out. As I reached out to catch them, she misinterpreted the motion, either genuinely or deliberately, and slapped my wrist hard enough to leave a red mark. The eggs crashed to the floor and cracked open, adding to the spreading chaos. Did everyone see that? Karen cried out dramatically, pointing at me. He tried to hit me! There was an audible gasp, but not the kind she was expecting. The crowd of onlookers, many of them with their phones out, had seen the entire thing. At least 5 people were recording, and none of them had captured the version of events Karen was now trying to sell. I think the video evidence will show otherwise, said a college-aged guy near the candy aisle, stepping forward and holding up his phone. On screen, it clearly showed Karen striking me. Karen's face went pale, then flushed with anger. He provoked me. You didn't see what happened before. He threatened me in the parking lot. The lies were now spiraling into absurdity. I hadn't even noticed her until she started this scene in the checkout line, let alone interacted with her outside. Just then, the store's automatic doors slid open and 2 police officers entered. Greg approached them quickly, speaking in hushed tones and pointing toward us. I stood quietly, still stunned that what was supposed to be a simple grocery run had turned into all-out warfare. One officer, a woman with short dark hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, walked over to me. Sir, she said calmly, can you tell me what happened? I recounted everything, the false accusation about cutting in line, the attempt to steal my groceries, the shouting, the slap, and the crowd's reaction. She listened carefully, occasionally glancing at the mess on the floor, and did the physical. Contact occur as the witnesses are describing? She asked. Did she slap your wrist? Yes, I said, holding up my arm. Right after she grabbed me. I was just trying to catch the eggs. Meanwhile, the other officer was dealing with a very different kind of interaction. Karen was gesturing wildly, her voice rising. Do you know who I am? She said, loud enough for the entire store to hear. I'm the president of the Oakwood Heights HOA. I know Captain Reynolds. We play golf at the country club. The officer remained stone-faced. Ma'am, that's not relevant to what happened here today. Karen switched tactics instantly, her tone softening. Officer, I was afraid. This man was aggressive from the moment I, politely, told him he'd cut in line. I was just defending myself, but the surrounding crowd had already heard enough. Several witnesses were shaking their heads. The young man from earlier stepped forward again. I've got the whole thing, he said, lifting his phone. From the first second she started yelling, she was the aggressor. More people nodded, holding up their own phones. The narrative Karen had constructed was unraveling fast. After a brief conversation between the officers, the female officer returned to me. Sir, would you like to press charges for assault? I hesitated. I didn't want to waste any more of my Saturday. But I thought of the countless stories I'd heard from neighbors, how Karen had bullied people for years under the guise of HOA standards. This wasn't an isolated incident. Yes, I said finally. I would like to press charges. Karen looked like she'd just been struck. You can't be serious. It was just a tap on the wrist. Ma'am, the male officer said firmly. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. What? No, this is ridiculous. Karen backed away, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. I'm not getting arrested over this. Do you know how this will look? I'm a respected member of the community. Ma'am, the officer said. Again, calmly but firmly, you are being placed under arrest for assault and disturbing the peace. You have the right to remain silent. As the Miranda rights were read, Karen's face drained of all color. For once, she had nothing to say. The entire store had fallen eerily quiet, all eyes on the scene unfolding at the checkout lane. The self-proclaimed queen of the HOA was being handcuffed in aisle 5. This is a mistake, she sputtered as they began walking her toward the exit. I'll sue this store. I'll sue you. She pointed at me with her chin, her hands secured behind her back. The HOA board will hear about this. As she was led out, an older woman, I recognized from a few doors down, stepped up beside me. That woman has made our lives miserable for years, she whispered. It's about time someone stood up to her. Greg helped me gather the groceries that hadn't been destroyed and insisted the store would replace the rest. I'm so sorry this happened, sir, he said. Today's groceries are on the house. I thanked him, still trying to process the absurdity of it all. As I pushed my cart toward the exit, several strangers stopped me to offer support or to share their own Karen stories. Turns out her reputation extended far beyond our street. 2 weeks later, I received a notice about a special HOA meeting. The top item on the agenda, a vote on whether to remove Karen Mitchell from her position as president due to her arrest and pending assault charge. The vote was unanimous. Even her former allies turned their backs after video of her grocery store meltdown went viral on local social media. When the verdict was announced, Karen would be removed from the board immediately and fined $2,000 with a potential 6-month jail sentence. She stood abruptly, knocking over her chair, and stormed out of the room without a word. The sharp click of her designer heels was the only sound as she exited, leaving behind the stunned silence of a community finally free of its self-appointed tyrant.